Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
Hello and welcome to my series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. The story of my guest today is a fairy story, only it's real. He started as a young boy in school who had to stand up because his parents couldn't afford to pay the school fees. He went on to the London School of Economics, studied with Laski, had Pierre Trudeau, who was to become Canadian Prime Minister, as a contemporary. He returned to India with a letter from the famous Harold Laski for Jawaharlal Nehru, joined the Indian Foreign Service. In time was to serve as India's ambassador to China, to the United States. He taught at the Delhi School of Economics. He was Vice Chancellor of the Jawaharlal Nehru University. And then the career in public life began to unfold. He went through 3 successive elections that he won, was elected Vice President of India, and finally President. I'm delighted to welcome former President K.R. Narayanan to this program. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
You have recently been honored with the Rajiv Gandhi Sadbhavna Award, and it mentioned sort of 2 major aspects that they were rewarding and applauding you for. And one of them was your moral rectitude as president, and maybe we'll start with that. And during your term as president, when was that moral rectitude sort of most seriously challenged?
It's a difficult question.
Was it the events in Gujarat and when you had to sort of intervene and nudge the Prime Minister to do something?
Gujarat was the most difficult dilemma for me. I did not want to embarrass the government in a tragic situation, but at the same time I wanted to goad them a little into action. But Gujarat was amazing for me because here is one of the states where communal killings were taking place, but it is not only the government but the whole country was not sensitive. The rest of the country just watched, except some delegations coming to me and to others and talking about this and condemning the events. I should have thought that there should be a much active reaction from the country as a whole, but somehow people were watching these sad events and not intervening at all.
But did you think that the government wasn't doing enough, the government of that time?
Government was not doing sufficiently enough, because at such communal events, if action by the government early enough to say that they would not tolerate violence and killings of your neighbors, they will be prepared to resort to police action or even military action, was conveyed to the people somehow that the government is serious in stopping these things, then I think there would have been less violence.
So as this anguished president, what did you do?
I think most of the time I have to keep my anguish to myself. Publicly I could not talk, though sometimes I burst out. But I could talk to the Prime Minister. That is the only thing effective I could do.
So what did you say to the Prime Minister?
I told the Prime Minister the ghastliness of the events happening there, and something should be done to stop them. I suggested military should be introduced, and government did introduce later on. And the Prime Minister was responsive to my arguments. Very often he very often, almost always, he agreed with me during the conversation, but that agreement did not follow up with action. He said once, this is a ghastly event when I said that, he said it's more than that, this is inhuman, etc., he said. But I suppose he was handicapped by the fact that this is happening in a state which was ruled by his own party, and that in politics it meant his hands were tied.
There has been a history of strained relationships between presidents and prime ministers. Would you describe this relationship as strained in some way? Because you came from ideologically a very different background. Harold Laski, the Congress, in some senses, is sort of a more youthful inclination to the left, and a very sort of liberal, secular outlook. And here was a party in power. You had to swear in to your constitutional role, a prime minister and a government that, that made you uncomfortable. What does a president do? And what did you feel?
I feel very anguished and sometimes helpless.
What is sort of an appropriate position for a president in this kind of a situation? Where what is you're the visible head of government, and what is unfolding in the country is something that you're uncomfortable about, you disagree with, and isn't it frustrating to sort of be in Rashtrapati Bhavan? And
it was really frustrating, but I could somehow express myself, and this is a delicate thing, how to publicly express my views, but I did express my views sufficiently and clearly so that the people understood my position without chastising the government openly and without taking a position openly. And this required a lot of diplomatic experience.
I think sort of the other time the issue of moral rectitude may have come up was when you were concluding your term and there was the possibility of a second term as president, and at least in the public domain you had to maintain this very studied silence while a lot was going on behind the scenes. Another anguish time for you?
It was not anguish time, it was delicate time, because some people did openly want me to stand for another term, and I did not express my view at that time, so there was some delicacy required. I told them that above all I was not quite well, and that is one constriction I had in having a second term. But they were not satisfied with that. They openly came to me and said, "You stand," all that. But I said that if there is some consensus on me for a second time, then I will consider it. This was my position.
Would you have considered it favorably if there was a consensus?
I think if there was a consensus, I would have most probably considered it favorably.
What advice, and we'll move on from this role as India's president in a moment, but what advice would you give sort of people who study and look at the Constitution and current and future presidents about the role of the president as it is unfolded 50 years after the Constitution was framed? The dynamic has changed, and in what ways is the president's role now changed?
President has to say openly if the Constitution is being violated subtly or openly, then he will have to point out some way or another. How it is pointed out depends on the circumstances, but he will have to point out if the government is erring or going away from the constitutional position.
But you still sort of regard the current arrangements of president, parliament, the role of the president as being appropriate for contemporary India and contemporary Indian politics? Or would you like to see that changed in some ways?
I think it is appropriate. You cannot change very much when the balance of our system would be upset. That we have to preserve.
You're watching a conversation with former President K.R. Narayanan, who recently won the Rajiv Gandhi Sadharma Award. The other thing that the Rajiv Gandhi Award had brought to the fore again and reminded us was your sort of lifelong struggle against caste discrimination and against, they use the word communalism. And what was the communal aspect that you struggled against? Was it sort of alluding, you think, the award to your role as president and when you took on the communal forces in a subtle and decisive way? Or was it sort of other aspects in your life?
Caste and communalism are more or less intermixed. There's very little difference. I wouldn't say fight against caste. I did not carry any active fight, but I had to oppose it whenever it expressed in my life actively. And communalism also, it is the same thing. Mine was a quiet struggle, not an open struggle.
Did it bother you that you had this very successful academic career, a diplomatic career, and you became the 10th president of India because you were good, and yet you were being hailed as the first Dalit president? Did that sort of disturb you in some way?
It disturbed me. It disturbed me because the Dalit aspect was not predominant in the minds of people who supported me and proposed me to be the president. It was not in my mind. I did not use a factor in any way during the process of the elections, and therefore when people started highlighting it, I was really disturbed. But I kept quiet. I recall that in a similar thing happened when I was visiting France. I was staying in the, put up as usual in their palace, and one paper there, what is the name of the main paper?
Le Monde.
Not Le Monde, the weekly. And they wrote once, and untouchable in the palace, a big headline. Anyway, they had not interviewed me, asked me anything, but it was very startling the way they put it. I don't know how they came to know that I am untouchable, but that must be through our sources.
So that sense of being ostracized when you were young, when did it sort of begin to leave you? Well, you got a first class in as a master's student in English literature, and you go to amongst the best institutions in the world. When does the sense leave you? When you move out of your immediate environment?
I had really not any feeling that I was being ostracized. That was one thing. I was not obsessed with that aspect. I behaved as if I was a human being. And the fact that I came from an untouchable community was not uppermost in my mind. In fact, in all my behavior or my conduct at that time, this did not figure in my thinking. Therefore, I just behaving like a human being and going around with it.
Do you feel a special empathy, a special responsibility for people with that kind of background who haven't been able to climb out of those circumstances, in a sense that you did and you didn't really experience, but sort of bear that label.
Yes.
Do you feel a special connection with them?
A special connection is, I feel that I have the empathy with them. That's always in my mind, but not as a grievance or blaming people, because I had my real experience. There were many people belonging to the higher caste who had been nice to me, who helped me, and there are many people who insulted me and taunted me.
So was there a defining moment like Gandhi being thrown out of the railway station in Africa?
I don't recall a defining moment. That is why I did not become a rebel like him.
You interviewed Mahatma Gandhi for the Times of India in your capacity as a journalist. So what is your memory of Mahatma Gandhi?
Actually, I did not interview him as a journalist or for Times of India. He was in Bombay, and I was about to go to England. So I wrote him a letter, purely personally. I did not mention that I was with the Times of India even in my letter, saying that I am a student going to England, belonging to this community. Also, I said, I should like to meet you before I go. And I got an appointment very soon indeed. And I went with a great deal of awe, and at the same time so many critical questions. But when I went to him, it was an impossible situation. I was told that he is having a silence fast. When I went there, I knew it, and I did not know what to do. So they said that you can ask your questions, Gandhiji will answer them. And I asked the questions, he was answering by writing.
So what was your most significant question?
My most significant questions were about untouchability and how to deal with them, and then about his non-violence, how it would be practicable in the Indian situation. It can be succeed according to when it is right, when his position is completely right. When there is a clash of rights, say between the two communities, the Hindus and the Muslims, how will your non-violence be effective? These 2-3 questions like that.
So in that youthful stage, did you believe in his philosophy of non-violence, or were you still sort of more enamored by the philosophy of the left that was then dominant at the London School of Economics?
This was before I went to London School of Economics.
So the influence hadn't yet begun to affect you?
Actually, I was, even in those days, I was a Gandhian. I was influenced more by Gandhi's philosophy than by the left or anything else. Though leftist influence I use for analyzing situations and understanding situations, and not in taking up positions.
Tell me, Gandhiji was sort of looking after the downtrodden, and caste was a major issue with him. What is your position today with the discussions and discourse on reservations? It has become such a major, remains a major issue on the national agenda. It is reported, and you have just pointed out that the press reports about you being a Times of India reporter were inaccurate. It's now sort of the press reports about your your support perhaps for privatization, for reservations in the private sector. What do you see as the role of reservations, and what future do you recommend for it?
I believe that in the earlier days that reservation is not the solution to the question, but it has impressed upon me that the society itself is not doing enough so that reservation have become inevitable and necessary. That is because of the absence of action on the part of society as a whole and on the part of the leadership or the country.
So what kind of actions would you like to see taken beyond reservations?
Beyond reservation, the actual thing is that if more sympathy for these Dalits actually existed in society, even now people are look at them with a little bit of contempt. It is not a fashionable issue to take up in society as a whole, and that attitude has to change. People would be more empathy to them, and if somebody coming up from this class by sheer merit, then it has to be recognized, and I don't think why they shouldn't be absorbed into the government and into positions. That is not happening in our country.
So would you look at any qualifications to the policy of reservation, say there should be reservation in education but not in specialized jobs? You know, it's a very controversial and large subject, so I don't want to draw you into that. Yeah. But are there any sort of principles that you hold dear to this issue?
I think that they should be given opportunities, because it is not enough to reserve and reserve positions for jobs, etc., can be a mechanistic action without your soul or your mind involved in it. I would say that if my experience in life is that when somebody shows that he is meritorious and is in a way exceptional, then he has to be recognized and rewarded. But in a way, Indian society had this in it, especially the Hindu society. And it's amazing that how when anybody has come up, the society has want to absorb it and make them part of them. That is how we continued with the system. I myself have experience of it. I recall that when I got a first class in Trivandrum in my MA, and it was news. It went all around India as Reuters said that so and so has got a first class in the university, and he stood first in the university and all that. To that, I had a very surprising reaction from the Birlas. The elder Birla, Jugal Kishore Birla, wrote me a letter congratulating me and also enclosing a check for 500 rupees. Mm-hmm. And this check was most precious for me at that time. And the letter contained told me that we have researched into your caste, and we have found that you are not really an untouchable, and said that you belong to a Kshatriya caste. And then advised me, I would advise, this is Jugal Kishore letter, advise you from today, you put a sacred thread and go about that, saying that you are a Kshatriya. I replied to it saying that I am most grateful for the check for 500 rupees, but I would want to say that I would not try to be a Kshatriya, nor would I want to wear a sacred thread and go about. In fact, I am proud of being an untouchable, and I would like to call myself an untouchable and move about in society. I don't know what happened to that letter, but when I came to Delhi later and saw Jugal Kishore, he was still very nice to me.
Just to go back to Harold Laski and the London School of Economics and the prevailing ideology of the left, what kind of influence was it on you? you came back and you carried this letter from Mr. Laski, and that's, it's a significant honor to get a man of his stature to give a young graduate student a letter of introduction to the Prime Minister of India. So obviously you'd made an impact, and there was a relationship.
Actually, there is a story about this letter. First I took up in LSE economics as my special subject, not because I have any great inclination towards economics, but everybody told me that this is your prospects. But then I found after some time I was not good at mathematics. I had to take up statistics as one of the subjects, and I did not like statistics at all, and I thought this is not my subject. And in the meantime, I was going and attending Laski's lectures, because anybody could go and attend his lectures. These were like public meetings, and I was fascinated by him. I should take political science as my special subject. So I went to Laski and asked him. He said, "But will Dr. Robbins agree to leave the department and come to me?" I said, and advised me that you first go to Professor Robbins and get his permission and then come to me. And that's why I went there and asked me whether you think that you can do your 2-year course in 1 year. Because it was in the middle of my time I went. I said, I have been following your lectures and all that, so I am familiar with the subject, so I think I will be able to do it. Then he asked me to write an essay, just to take me in whether I am good enough for that. That essay he liked, and on the basis of that, he took me to the...
And here you are, a product of the London School of Economics, with Harold Laski giving you this letter. What did the letter say? That, to impress India's Prime Minister and give you an interview, see you, and offer you a job in the Indian Foreign Service. So what did the letter say? Did you get a chance to look at it?
Yes, I had that letter with me.
And it was open envelope?
I still have the original with me.
Okay, what did it say?
It said that so and so I want to recommend to you for a position in the Indian government, and I hope you will be considered by the federal service, all that. And then, as his first essay I wrote Laski, this has a chain effect. He told me that you write to me another when I went to him, and gave me a subject. And when I finished that essay, I go to him, he gave me another subject. Thus he became my tutor more or less. At one of the essays, he was very much impressed with it. It was very interesting. The subject was toleration in Britain. Religious toleration and political toleration. I did a lot of reading and thinking on that, and I wrote an essay. He was very much impressed with that.
So in a sense, the intellectual preparation for what you were to confront decades later had already begun.
Yes.
You've been watching a conversation with President K.R. Narayanan.